As you're watching this morning on ITV, it's time now for our first discussion segment. And you know, as usual, Monday morning, the aviation comes first. It is so, just to keep you abreast with what is happening in the aviation sector. You know that when it comes to business, the aviation route makes business faster, safer, and to an extent, even much more profitable. To do this, how the aviation sector can attain full employment as airports in Nigeria and across the world is, of course, gradually reopened. I have with me, he is by ICAO standard, an aviation expert. By FAN standard, he's an aviation researcher and publisher, #1 aviation freak in Nigeria, and of course, he is a licensed estate surveyor and valuer, Mr. Godwin Ike. Very good morning to you.
Hi, good morning, Joe. Good. And how was your weekend?
Very beautiful. Foreign direct investment, which is easily facilitated by the aviation sector. But as it stands now, there are so many challenges. Some, of course, have reduced their personnel. Some airlines may not be able to fly because they're not in the list. But just give and take, how do you think the aviation sector can easily bounce back?
All right, Joe, that's an interesting topic you're dealing with this morning. First of all, get it straight and right that the fastest way, the easiest way to move around goods and services, remains via the aviation sector. Airplanes move goods and services around the world, the quickest way anyone can ever muster. Having said that, it follows that as you ground the aviation sector, you ground goods and services. Therefore, of course, like I always say, they sit there so helplessly, like sitting dogs. And so that's what we've got on our hands. A few mistakes were made. If you recall, while we were still grappling with the corona pandemic,
yes,
and at the initial time when people were very hysterical and panicky, I called the attention of this nation,
yes,
severally, and I said, as planes sit on the ground, all they do is run beers.
yes.
The only time they rake in money is when they're in the skies.
Yes.
And so I prepare the mind of government that, listen, as we were locked down, those who park their cars were not spending their fuel and were not servicing their cars. Those who park their motorbikes, just have them parked there.
Just remember
without necessarily running beers. But those who parked airplanes were busy spending money. Otherwise, as soon as you open up your skies, you will find no plane, airworthy enough to be in the skies. So in order to keep them airworthy, one type of maintenance or the other, took place, some on daily basis, some aspects on weekly basis, and other aspects on monthly basis. That is the nature of airplane. So I gave that privileged information to a nation and then asked the government of Nigeria to brace up.
Yes.
And you remember all those, don't you?
Yes.
I asked them to brace up and get ready to set up a quick committee to call in the airline executives and operators, find out their situation, yes, how they could be helped, understanding that even though we are dealing with private organizations and enterprises,
yes,
but because of the special nature of the services they were offering, to the economy of the country, then government whose business it is to keep the economy of the nation soaring into the skies, it should take advantage by, for its own personal interest, calling these airlines, finding out their situation, what troubles they were going through, and then provide funding that will enable them jump into the skies right away as soon as the skies were open. Unfortunately, I don't think those concerned really understood or saw the point I was making and the need to be prompt in taking the steps that I had recommended. What did we find on our hands? We waited for too long, and then, of course, as we opened our skies, it then dawned on everyone that those airlines were not capable of safely getting into the sky.
How hot is she?
Maybe a 7.
Mm-hmm.
How hot is he?
8.5.
Taste me now.
Whoa, how hot is she?
Very hot.
Pick me. Just pick me, baby. Come pick me, girl. Man, I'm all ready for you.
So tasty.
He's so lucky.
Stop being jealous, man.
Mini-Me. Taste the fun.
See ahead of time, what would happen if if you didn't do what you needed to do. But somehow we waited too long. I understand that the bankers committee is offering to help, with the financials. Very well. However, I still maintain we waited for too long, because we should have really gotten all these problems out of the way before they ever showed up.
Okay.
However, here we are.
All right. Now, here we are. There definitely must be a way out. And as an expert in this sector, you have so many suggestions or recommendations you can offer or you can profile, which is why you are most suitable to discuss this topic. Now, in the taking us back rather to the 1930s depression, where of course there are so many submissions by the classicals that hey, let's just wait, the economy will attain full employment by itself, and then the Keynesians say no. If you have to wait, everybody will die. What we can do is government can intervene by way of tax and by the way of spending. So if we are going to adopt that Keynesian model of tax and spending, what do you think can be done? These airplanes have been parked. You have to pay for, parking fees. And then
you have to do some maintenance.
You have to do some maintenance, and then during this process, where by error of say commission and omission, there's an increase in VAT, which of course will push the airfares a little bit higher. What can be done in that area? And then if it got to do with spending, how do you think? Which area do you think government should spend so that the aviation will easily get back to full employment? These questions are just too many, but let's look at the tax in terms of parking fees and in terms of VAT before we look at the other one.
Joe, I think if airlines are able to do their business and if they are, in the skies, moving around goods and services, moving around, human beings who are going from one part of the country or the world to the other, of course, they will be reckoning some cash that will be needed to pay most of the bills that may come their way. But the point is getting started, and that is where the issue lies. Are those airplanes airworthy enough at the moment to get started. If they are, then that's fine. They will be able to rake in enough cash to pay their bills, whether you increase VAT or not. However, an area that I think the airlines can also help themselves is at the moment, their business should be to convince the flying public that it is safe to fly in the airplanes. I've told them this severally, and I hope somebody somewhere is listening. The primary business right now is to encourage the passengers, the would-be passengers, to come forward, go ahead and get around and do their business, fly from one point to the other, by convincing them that it is safe to fly. I've done a whole lot of that. It's very expensive media job that they haven't paid a dime for, but I'm doing it for my nation, not necessarily for the airlines. I have called their attention that, listen, you've got to begin to reach out to the media houses, get this information across that it is safe to sit in the cabin of the airplanes and fly from one point to the other. And then, for a start, reduce your airfare, even when you think that you have a lot of bills out there to pay. As government is assisting in providing money for the payment of those bills, do the economic part of it that you need to deal with. Create more demand of your services by reducing fares, welcoming your passengers. Call it a welcome package. And then it will sound foolish, but Joe, that welcome package is extremely important, because by the time an individual who needs to fly from Abuja to Lagos does it once, twice, thrice, and he finds out that he didn't contract coronavirus flying, he's going to tell his friends that
it's safe.
In our usual parlance, these stories that Godike used to tell us about the air conditioning system of the airplane, about suction, and about the virus disappearing even if it came out of somebody's nose or mouth in the bit of sneezing or coughing, that is not true. Somebody next to me was really sneezing and coughing. I was so uncomfortable, but I watched myself for 1 or 2 weeks to see if nothing, me a day can't wait.
In a local balance, yeah.
Very well. Before you know it, the confidence will be built up. The news will spread, and a whole lot of people will fly, and that will increase cargo business. It will increase the passenger business. And then slowly and gradually you get yourself back to the point where the ticketing will need to be for you to begin to make profit. And at that point, you will notice that people will just be busy going about their business, not worrying anymore how much they are paying for the services, and not worrying that there's coronavirus out there to attack them and all those stuff. This is the first thing to do. Otherwise, if they fold their arms and think that there will be some kind of miracle or some kind of magic that will get a whole lot of people, flying and get them out of the woods, I tell you what, Joe, the more government supplies money, the more the airplanes will consume them. And it will be like what they call in aviation a holding pattern. I'm going to describe it to you very quickly.
Yes.
Now, as a pilot, if you arrive a very busy airport, where you have about 100 or 200 airplanes in the skies, taking their turns to land within the 1 or 2 runways available at that airport. The control towers will put you on a 360 degrees. That is running round and round the wide circle. You know, you are in motion, but you're not getting any ground. Yeah.
Because there are other airlines that want to land.
And then you break out of the circle and then zero into the allocated runway and touch down. That is called a holding pattern.
Yeah.
This is
all other things being equal for that aircraft to be on holding pattern. The aircraft must have enough aviation fuel, otherwise it may not be on holding pattern.
Very correct. Well, I mean, as you know, we've had issues around the world where airplanes run out of fuel, being on holding pattern, and ended up not making it to the runway and crashing. Remember the one that killed some footballers?
Yeah, in Brazil.
That was exactly what happened to that airplane. He was put on a holding pattern, and because, of course, the young man lied about where he was coming from, the control tower, imagined by the lie they were told that he should have enough fuel
to be on the holding pattern.
To be on holding pattern. But it turned out that because of wrong information, he actually didn't have enough fuel. By the time he was called in to land, he couldn't make it to the runway. The plane crashed and killed a lot of footballers. So
about 72 of them on board.
That's correct. So I mean, these are issues, and so the airlines must really get on their beat and do things more intelligently. And then, of course, I continue to insist the Minister of Aviation, Hardy Sirika, would have to set up a very powerful, knowledgeable committee to attend to these airlines and help them to get back on their beat. Otherwise, if we continue to do ad hoc things, they will be receiving money, consuming them, and you don't see the effect on the economy of Nigeria.
Okay, now let's look at I don't want to call it subsidy for the aviation fuel, but if there is a reduction in aviation fuel, to what extent do you think it will help the industry?
You mean in the price?
Yes, in the price, of course.
Yeah, Joe, that's a very important point you just hit right now, Joe. The price of aviation fuel in Nigeria is scandalous. It doesn't happen anywhere in the world except in Nigeria. Even at a time that people were being begged to come and carry crude oil free around the world. When aviation fuel, especially Jet A1, when the price crashed around the world, it still stayed up in the skies in Nigeria. The government needs to find out why it is so and deal decisively with it. The price of Jet A1 in Nigeria is scandalous. It cannot sustain our airline business. We've got to do something. And what we need to do is as easy as ABC. If they don't know what to do, they can ask questions, and I'm waiting. If anybody asks, I'll prefer my suggestions. This time around, as consultancy. we must begin to think, Joe.
Yeah.
We can't go on this way as a people. This has gone on for too long, and we must put an end to it because it's becoming nonsensical. We can't go on this way.
Yeah. Okay. Now, let's quickly look at some other aspects, which has to do with personnel of airlines, personnel of FAN, personnel, the ad hoc staff all around. For some persons that have been in some airports, you discover that there are some persons that must be on the ground when a plane wants to land or when a plane wants to take off. The direct the pilot. Now, if we have reduction of personnel, can you tell us some very key personnel that must not be tampered with in terms of their numerical strength?
Joe, you're busy. You're busy asking very intelligent questions this morning, and I'm wondering what happened to you overnight. I mean, you really are sounding,
you know what it is when you are dealing with an expert. You have to also put your thoughts together in the right direction.
Right, Joe. You're asking all the right questions, Joe. There is no area that needs to be short-staffed.
Yeah.
It is extremely dangerous to have pilots exceeding the man hours that they are supposed to be put in flying. Because if you overtask pilots, the workload in the cockpit, when we fly, we sit down, enjoying ourselves, watching TV, listening to music, conversing with our friends and family sitting next to us, having some small chops and drinks to take, and the plane is cruising, and you think everything is as easy as ABC. Joe, in the cockpit, it's huge workload, especially during takeoff and landing, and even when you are, crisscrossing the international air boundaries, connecting with control towers, whose business it is to separate airplanes to make sure there are no air collisions. Joe, it's a whole lot of workload in the cockpit. That's why, when you're taking off and then when you're landing, there's something they call sterile, cockpit rules. Right. At that point, you're not expected to get into conversations or anything that is outside that business of landing your airplane safely. That's why he said at that point it is sterile. All conversations amongst the pilots and engineers will be conversation towards safe landing and nothing more. That's why they call it sterile cockpit rule. Very well. Now, understanding that there is so much workload, for pilots to do, it requires concentration. It requires, being mentally alert.
Yeah.
And so that's why, again, that the International Civil Aviation Organization, ICAO, and its sister IATA, International Air Transport Association, IATA. Now, that's why they put out safety rules.
Yeah.
And then made it clear that there's a number of hours that an average pilot must not go beyond in a particular day flying, because once a pilot gets tired,
yes,
mentally sapped, and
fatigue,
it begins to lose concentration, Joe, it is a recipe for a crash.
Yeah.
Because the pilot at a point may lose his situational awareness,
yeah,
and do the wrong thing, and that's all it takes, and that flight is doomed, and it wastes lives unnecessarily.
Sure.
And so it becomes important that the number of pilots required to ensure that they don't exceed the flying hours that they are supposed to do, in a particular day, should be in place all the time.
Yeah.
For safety,
but who
for
checks
safety
that?
reasons.
Who checks
And
that?
then
Who checks that?
Well, that's the job of NCAA, the Nigerian Civil Aviation Authority, the NCAA. They are the ones in charge of ensuring that there's safety in operation, and that those that are concerned that are doing the right thing to comply with the rules and ensure their safety. NCAA is solely squarely on their shoulders. It's not fun. FAN is there to manage our airports, but for this kind of thing that I'm talking about, let me I haven't answered your question. That is the business of NCAA. Let me tell you another aspect that is torturous and that we have to watch. Those that you find in the control tower.
Yeah.
That is another crazy place.
Okay, the personnel there also should not be touched.
No, because the slightest mental tiredness and mental distraction, a flight controller can issue a wrong instruction that will cause an air collision. And that will cause, misleading of the pilot and therefore crashing. I remember once in the United States of America, I was sitting next to a practicing pilot in the airplane. He was a passenger and was sitting next to me. And when we got talking, I realized that he was captain of one of the airlines in the U.S. It was a local flight. I think we were flying from New York to Los Angeles. And then it was a long flight, about 7 hours or thereabout. And then we got talking about airplanes, and I told him about my interest in the aviation sector, and then he was amazed when I told him I wasn't a pilot. Well, he said to me, "How did you acquire this kind of knowledge that you've been discussing with me?" I said, and then I smiled. And then, Joe, the important thing I want to bring out here is he said to me, "Listen, I almost died one day." And then I said, "What happened?" He said, if it hadn't been an airport that he had visited severally and landed on severally, that he would have lost his life and along with that of his passengers on that fateful day. And I asked him, what happened? He said, you can't believe it. I was approaching from a particular direction, and then the control tower, the air controller, apparently really tired and completely sapped, said to him, you need to do a left turn. And gave him a heading that he needed to do. And then he took a look at his compass and said to himself, what's this guy talking about? Hey, do you mean I needed to turn right? I just heard you say left. And that's when the guy woke up and said, oh, I'm sorry, please right.
It would have been a
and
disaster.
The man said to me that he knew that a left turn was going to head him to a massive hill. And he would have descended into the hill and crashed and killed everyone in the airplane. But because of his knowledge of the terrain and where he was approaching from, he knew that what he needed to do was a right turn, but the control tower lost concentration and told him left.
Wow. So, which means that times when there's a crash, the guys in the control tower may have, have issues to do with it.
The simple thing is that they have to be on top of their mental state all the time. They shouldn't be overused. Once they put in the man hours that that have been calculated to be safe for them to remain alert, they must change. Another team must take over and continue from where the same thing as flying. When you are doing a long distance flight, or even if it's a short one, once a pilot puts in those number of hours dedicated for I think it's about 4 hours or thereabout. Once they put in those flying hours, they must step out of the cockpit and another crew should step in and continue the job from there.
Okay, before we go, aviation publisher, researcher and publisher, if the federal government is to assist local airlines, what form would you suggest it should be?
Joe, let's understand that some of the airlines are at the moment not operating as responsibly as they should, you know, especially with their accounting system and financials. I must admit that, because I remember, you know, when I was on NTA once with the Honorable Minister discussing these issues, Honorable Minister Hadi Sirika admitted that it was an area they needed to look into, and and very humbly, called me by my first name on that day. What God has just said is absolutely something that we need to look into and begin to deal with. It's not about doling out cash. Part of the job of this committee have been recommending that government must set in order for us to fix our aviation industry is to look into the accounting operations of airlines, ensure that a proper accounting system is set up for them to run their finances responsibly. Otherwise, if you don't do this and you push in money into the system, the likelihood is that the chief executive, the owner of the airline, may just pick up the money and move it to some other
business,
personal business, and then the airline will continue to suffer. I remember during the investigation of Dana Air on the floor of the Senate. Remember, Joe, that I was invited, and I testified, about what I knew about, Dana Air.
That was June 3rd, 2012.
Well, that was after that that crash of 2012, June 3rd. Yeah. A couple of weeks after the crash, there was this investigation on the floor of the Senate. And then the combined team of the House and the Senate set up a committee to investigate not just only the crash of Dana at the time, but the operations of the other airlines. Joe, we were all shocked when an accountant of one of the airlines, of course, that airline is collapsed since then. It hasn't been, in the air. Told a shocked committee and the audience in the place, including my humble self, that their airplane would soon, according to, I'm quoting that accountant, would soon be crashing off the skies because all the money they were making, their chief executive was carrying it and sending it to his business outside Nigeria. And that they didn't have enough money to service their airplanes, that they were making money, but the money was not being used for the maintenance of the airplanes. And of course, he predicted at the time that if nothing was done, that they should expect one or two crashes of that particular airline at that time. Well, fortunately, the airline didn't live through to crash. Of course, the airline came down and stopped business operation up until this day. So these are some of the things that chief executives of airlines can do. Not because this business is not a good business, but because of financial irresponsibility and extreme selfishness. Just gathering money, knowing fully well that those airplanes will need some of the money. A minimum of 40% of what you rake in will be consumed by the airplanes to keep you safe and alive. And
all right, Mr. Godwin, I must thank you for making out time for the program this morning.
Yes.
Viewers, the most we have on this discussion segment has been with an aviation expert by ICAO standard. Of course, an aviation researcher and publisher by Fan Standard. He is an aviation freak, Mr. Godwin Ike. Many thanks for spending your time with us.
All right, thank you. Thank you, and let's do it again.
All right, so we'll take a quick break. When we come back, the program this morning on ITV will continue.